My name is Audrey, and at 34 years old, I sat in a lawyer office watching my family inherit millions while I was handed a single envelope. My mother laughed when she saw the plane ticket to Atlantic City inside, telling me to go have fun with my $1 chip. She had no idea that the $1 chip was the key to an empire that would soon crush them. Before I tell you how I bankrupted my arrogant brother-in-law in a single night, please hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the black sheep of your family. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. The air conditioning in the law firm of Sterling and Cooper hummed in the silence, but it could not drown out the sound of my brother-in-law Tyson screaming into his cell phone. He was bragging about a merger to someone who probably did not care. Tyson was new money loud and desperate to prove it. He checked his gold watch every 30 seconds, as if mourning my grandfather was costing him billable hours. Next to him, my sister Courtney was not crying. She was frantically typing on her phone, probably captioning a sad selfie for her 50,000 followers with hashtags about heartbreak and legacy. I could almost see the calculated pout on her lips as she adjusted the lighting on her screen. And then there was my mother, Patricia. She sat across from me, tapping her manicured nails on the leather table. She was not looking at the empty chair where her father used to sit. She was staring at the reflection of her recent facelift in the window, ensuring the lighting was flattering. She leaned over to Courtney and whispered loud enough for me to hear. "I hope this does not take long, because I have a fitting at Bergdorf at 4. They were vultures in designer clothing waiting to pick the bones of a man they barely visited. I sat in the corner in my 3-year-old blazer that I bought from a consignment shop. I am a risk assessor for an insurance firm. My job is to look at a situation and find the hidden dangers, the cracks in the foundation. Sitting there, I analyzed my own family. They looked confident. They looked like winners in their Chanel suits and Italian leather shoes. But I saw the truth. My mother was leveraging one credit card to pay another. Courtney and Tyson were living a lifestyle funded by loans they could not service. They needed this inheritance desperately. I just missed my grandfather. He was the only one who did not look at me like a mistake. The heavy oak doors swung open and Mr. Henderson, the senior partner, walked in. He held the portfolio that contained our futures. The room went silent. Tyson finally hung up the phone, ending his performance. Patricia sat up straighter, smoothing her skirt with a greedy gleam in her eyes. The tension in the room was so thick I could taste it. Henderson looked at us over his spectacles. He cleared his throat and began to read. I held my breath. I expected nothing, but I was not prepared for the insult that was about to be delivered. The reading of the will was about to begin, and the cruelty of my family was about to be on full display. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, and the sound echoed like a gavel in the silent room. He adjusted his wire-rimmed spectacles and began to read from the heavy cream-colored stationery. To my daughter Patricia, whom I hope finally finds contentment, I leave the Hamptons estate located on Dune Road, including all furnishings, and the private art collection currently housed within. The estimated value is $15 million. Patricia did not shed a single tear for her father. Instead, she let out a long sigh of relief that sounded more like a hiss. She turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Finally, she whispered, I can finally renovate that dusty old museum. I am going to gut the library first. It was always so gloomy. She was talking about destroying my grandfather's favorite room, the place where he taught me to read financial reports while she was out shopping. Henderson continued without acknowledging her disrespect. To my granddaughter Courtney and her husband Tyson, I bequest the family yacht known as the Sea King, and 20% of the voting shares in Edwards Packaging. Tyson practically vibrated in his seat. He grabbed Courtney's hand and squeezed it hard. I could see the dollar signs flashing in his eyes. He leaned over and muttered to her loud enough for the room to hear. We are going to liquidate the yacht immediately. The maintenance fees are a tax nightmare. We can put that cash into a high-yield hedge fund and double it in 6 months. He was already gambling away the inheritance before the ink was even dry. Courtney beamed, imagining the influence she would wield with company shares. She was already typing a note on her phone, probably a list of board members she intended to fire. The room felt smaller. They had the houses, the boats, and the company. They had everything that defined the Edwards name. They had stripped his legacy down to assets and liquidity. I sat there with my hands clasped tightly in my lap, waiting for my name. I knew I was not the favorite. I knew I was the practical one, the boring one, the one who refused to kiss the ring. But surely he had left me something. Maybe the small cabin upstate where we used to fish. Maybe his old journal filled with business wisdom. Or perhaps just enough to pay off my student loans. Patricia looked at her diamond-encrusted watch again. "Is that it, Mr. Henderson?" she asked, sounding bored. "We really do need to get going." Tyson chuckled, leaning back in his chair with arrogant satisfaction. "Yeah, I think we heard the important parts, right? Unless there is a bequest for the cat." They looked at me with a mixture of pity and amusement. It was the look you give a stray dog that you have no intention of feeding. They were already mentally spending their millions erasing me from the picture. Henderson looked up from the paper. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a strange weight. He looked at me with a softness that terrified me. "There is one final bequest," he said quietly, "to my granddaughter Audrey." My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat up straighter, ignoring the smirks on my family's faces. I was ready for anything. Or so I thought. Mr. Henderson slid a single thin envelope across the mahogany table toward me. It was so light it barely made a sound as it glided over the polished wood. My stomach dropped. There was no weight to it. No keys to a property, no heavy stack of bonds, no thick legal documents transferring ownership, just a flimsy piece of paper inside. The silence in the room stretched thin and tight. Even Tyson stopped smirking for a second, curious to see what the black sheep of the family had received. I reached out with trembling fingers and opened the flap. I turned it over and shook the contents onto the table. 2 items fell out. The first was a printed airline ticket. Spirit Airlines. Economy class. One way. Destination Atlantic City, New Jersey. The second item made a hollow clacking sound as it hit the table. It was a single poker chip. It was white, battered around the edges and yellowed with age. In the center, faded black letters spelled out the value. $1. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Courtney let out a snort of laughter that she tried to disguise as a cough. That broke the dam. Tyson threw his head back and roared, slapping his knee. Patricia covered her mouth, but her eyes were dancing with cruel delight. "Oh, honey," she gasped, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye. "I guess Dad really did know you best. He knew you were useless with money, so he sent you on a little vacation instead. Go play the slots, Audrey. Maybe you will win enough to buy yourself a personality." Tyson reached out and snatched the chip from the table, flipping it into the air like a coin. $1, he sneered, catching it with a snap of his wrist. "That is generous. Do not spend it all in one place, Audrey. Although knowing you, you probably will put it in a savings account and earn 2 cents interest a year. This is hilarious." The old man had a sense of humor after all. He left the empire to the closers and gave the spare change to the loser. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, burning my skin. My grandfather was a billionaire. He owned skyscrapers in Chicago and shipping fleets in the Pacific. He was a titan of industry. And he left me a budget plane ticket and a piece of plastic worth less than a cup of coffee. Was this a joke? Was this a final lesson about humility? Or did he really hate me as much as my mother always said he did? I looked at the chip in Tyson's hand. It looked worthless. But my grandfather never did anything without a reason. He was a man who calculated risk for breakfast. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat loudly, silencing the laughter. "There is a condition," he said softly, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made me pause. "You must use the ticket tonight. The flight leaves at 9 p.m. from JFK. If you miss it, the bequest is void and the chip must be returned to the estate." Patricia waved her manicured hand dismissively, already reaching for the bottle of champagne they had brought to celebrate. "Go on then, Audrey. Do not miss your flight. We have real business to discuss here, and we do not need you moping around depressing the mood. Send us a postcard from the gutter, darling, assuming you can afford a stamp." I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy, but my spine was straight. I snatched the dirty white chip from Tyson's hand. His fingers were greasy and hot. I looked at them one last time. They were celebrating their victory. They thought they had won the lottery. I was being exiled to a decaying gambling town with $1 to my name. I tucked the envelope into my purse. "I will go," I said, my voice steady. "Enjoy your champagne. It might be the last expensive thing you ever taste." I turned and walked out the door, leaving their laughter echoing behind me. The elevator ride down to the parking garage was suffocating, but the silence gave me a moment to think. I clutched the strap of my purse tightly, feeling the sharp edge of the poker chip through the leather. It was all I had left. When the doors opened, the smell of gasoline and damp concrete hit me. I walked past the row of reserved spaces, where the partners parked their Porsches and Teslas, making my way to the far corner where I had left my 10-year-old sedan. It was a gray car with a dent in the rear bumper and an engine that rattled when it rained. It was humble, but it was mine, paid for with double shifts and overtime. I climbed into the driver's seat and tossed the envelope onto the passenger side. I turned the key, and the engine sputtered before coughing to life. I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding. I just wanted to go home, pack a bag, and get this humiliating trip over with. I shifted into reverse and checked my mirrors. The garage was empty, or so I thought. As I began to back out, a blinding flash of xenon headlights flooded my rearview mirror. A guttural roar of a high-performance engine echoed off the concrete walls, shaking the frame of my small car. I slammed on the brakes just inches before impact. A sleek, midnight blue vintage Aston Martin swerved around me and cut me off, blocking my exit completely. My heart skipped a beat. It was my grandfather's car. It was his pride and joy, a vehicle he treated with more respect than he treated most people. He never let anyone drive it, not even Patricia. Now Tyson was behind the wheel. He revved the engine aggressively, the sound tearing through the quiet garage. He looked like a child who had stolen a weapon he did not know how to use. Beside him, Courtney was holding a bottle of champagne, laughing and recording everything on her phone. Tyson lowered the window and leaned out his elbow, resting on the door with casual arrogance. "Hey, Audrey," he shouted over the hum of the engine. "Nice ride. Does that thing have horsepower or hamster power?" He laughed at his own joke, looking at Courtney for validation. I rolled down my window, staring at him with cold indifference. "Move the car, Tyson," I said, my voice flat. "I have a flight to catch." Tyson smirked, tapping the steering wheel. "Oh, right. The big trip to Atlantic City. Do not worry, we will not keep you. We just wanted to make sure you had enough gas to get to the airport. We know how tight money is for people like you." He reached into the breast pocket of his Italian suit and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He crumpled it into a ball and flicked it at my car. It hit my windshield with a soft thud and slid down, getting caught under my wiper blade. "Consider it a donation," Tyson sneered. "Go buy yourself a tank of gas, or maybe a personality. Either way, get out of my sight." He slammed his foot on the accelerator. The tires screeched, leaving black marks on the pavement as the Aston Martin shot forward up the ramp and into the daylight. The sound of their laughter faded, leaving me alone in the dim light. I stared at the crumpled green bill on my windshield. It was an insult. It was a reminder of my place in their world. I could have stepped out and taken it. I could have used it. But I did not. I turned on my windshield wipers. The blades swept back and forth, knocking the money onto the dirty, oil-stained floor of the garage. I shifted into drive and pulled away, leaving the $100 in the dust. I did not look back. I had a plane to catch and a destiny to claim. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the steering wheel of my battered sedan. The highway blurred through a veil of angry tears, but I refused to pull over. I could still feel the phantom weight of the crumpled $100 bill hitting my windshield. It was not the poverty that hurt. It was the dismissal. To them, I was not a person. I was a problem to be solved with a handful of cash and a one-way ticket. My hand drifted to my pocket, finding the cold, hard edge of the poker chip. It was not just plastic. It was a tactile link to the only man who had ever truly seen me. Suddenly, the noise of the traffic faded, and I was back in his mahogany-lined study 20 years ago. I was 10 years old, sitting across from Grandpa Edward over a chessboard. Outside on the manicured lawn, Patricia was hosting a garden party, laughing too loudly with women who secretly despised her. Inside, the air smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper. Grandpa moved his knight, trapping my queen. I gasped, reaching out to save my peace, but he caught my wrist gently. "Stop," he rumbled, his voice low and gravelly. "Look at the board, Audrey. You are reacting. You are trying to save a piece because you are afraid of losing it. That is how your mother thinks. She hoards jewelry and compliments because she is empty inside." He released my hand and pointed to the board. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the queen to capture the king. It is called a gambit. Let them think they have won. Let them get arrogant. Arrogance blinds people. When they are busy celebrating, that is when you strike. Just then the study door had burst open. Patricia stood there holding a glass of Chardonnay, looking annoyed. "Oh, Dad, stop boring the poor girl with your silly games. She's not going to run a company. She is too quiet. She needs to learn how to dress, not how to play chess. She is going to need a husband to take care of her." Grandpa had not looked at her. He kept his eyes on me and winked. It was a secret between conspirators. "Let them underestimate you, Audrey," he had whispered as Patricia turned away. "Being the underdog is your greatest weapon. They never see the checkmate coming until it is too late." The memory faded as the harsh fluorescent lights of the JFK airport terminals loomed ahead. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, drying the tears. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Grandpa had known this day would come. He knew Patricia and Tyson would strip his legacy for parts. He had given me the chip not as a joke but as a signal. I pulled up to the curb at the departure terminal. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, but my jaw was set. I was done being the quiet one. I was done being the victim. I grabbed my bag and stepped out of the car. The cool night air hit my face. I was not going to Atlantic City to gamble. I was going to collect. They thought I was a pawn to be sacrificed. They were about to find out I was the player. The fluorescent lights of JFK Terminal 4 hummed with a manic energy that matched the pounding in my head. I dragged my small suitcase toward the Spirit Airlines self-service kiosk. The bright yellow screen blinked at me, mocking my reality. While my family was likely ordering their second bottle of vintage Dom Perignon, I was standing in line behind a man arguing about the weight of his duffel bag. The machine asked if I wanted to pay $50 for a carry-on. I hit decline. I had packed light, just enough clothes for a weekend of humiliation before I returned to my small apartment and my heavy student loans. My phone vibrated against my palm. Then again, and again. It was a rapid-fire assault of notifications that made my hand numb. I looked down. It was the family group chat. For years they had excluded me from their private threads, but today they wanted an audience. The group name had been changed from Edward's Family to the Winner's Circle. I hesitated. I knew I should not look. It was a form of emotional self-harm. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and the human need to know how much you are hated is a powerful force. I unlocked the screen. A photo filled the display. It was taken at Le Bernardin, one of the most expensive seafood restaurants in the city. Patricia was holding a crystal flute of champagne, her face flushed with victory and expensive treatments. Courtney was posing next to a tower of shellfish, doing a duck face that was meant to look cute but just looked vacant. Tyson had his arm draped over the back of his chair, looking like he owned the place. But it was the caption that made my blood run cold. Patricia had written, "Finally a dinner without the dark cloud hovering over us. The air is so much lighter tonight. Cheers to the new era." Courtney replied instantly with heart emojis and the text, "The energy is so much better now. No more judgment, just vibes. Miss you, Daddy, but glad the downer is gone." Tyson had posted a picture of the bill. It was over $4,000. The caption read, "Pocket change. Spending the old man's money tastes better than earning it." They were not just celebrating the inheritance. They were celebrating my exile. They were toasting to my absence. I felt a tear prick the corner of my eye, but I blinked it away. I was done crying for people who would not shed a tear for me if I died tomorrow. I looked at their smiling faces one last time. They looked so happy, so secure, so oblivious. They thought they had won the game. They did not realize that by sending me away, they had just handed me the dice. I held down the power button on the side of my phone. The screen went black, swallowing their smiles into the darkness. Silence. It was the most beautiful sound I had heard all day. I shoved the phone deep into my bag buried under my clothes. I did not need it where I was going. Group 4 boarding, the agent announced over the intercom. I picked up my bag and joined the line of tired travelers. I walked down the jet bridge, the tunnel narrowing like the barrel of a gun. I was leaving Audrey, the victim, behind in New York. The woman boarding this plane was someone else. I clutched the poker chip in my pocket, feeling the ridges against my thumb. Atlantic City was waiting. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the plane, ready to find out what my grandfather was really trying to tell me. The wheels of the plane touched down on the tarmac of Atlantic City International Airport with a jarring thud that rattled my teeth. It was fitting. My arrival in this city was not smooth or graceful. It was abrupt and harsh, just like my departure from New York. I grabbed my bag from the overhead bin, ignoring the sympathetic looks from the flight attendants, who probably wondered why a woman in a business suit was flying alone on a Tuesday night to a gambling town. I walked out of the terminal and the air hit me. It smelled different here. It smelled of salt water, exhaust fumes, and desperation. The airport was quieter than JFK, less chaotic, but more ominous. I pulled out my phone to call a rideshare. My finger hovered over the cheapest option. A $15 ride in a Honda Civic. It was pathetic. I was the granddaughter of a billionaire standing on a curb debating between a $15 ride and a $20 ride, while my family was likely opening a bottle of wine worth more than my car. I tapped the screen to confirm the ride, but before the app could process the request, a blinding light cut through the darkness. I shielded my eyes. Around the curve of the pickup lane, a convoy of vehicles appeared. They moved in perfect synchronization like a military unit. 3 massive black Cadillac Escalades with tinted windows that swallowed the light. They glided toward the curb, their engines purring with a low, menacing rumble. They pulled up directly in front of me, blocking the path of a shuttle bus behind them. I took a step back, clutching the handle of my suitcase. My heart began to race. This did not look like a casino shuttle. This looked like a scene from a movie where the witness gets taken out before they can testify. I looked around for airport security, but the sidewalk was deserted. The driver of the lead vehicle stepped out. He was a mountain of a man, easily 6'4", wearing an immaculate black suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe. He wore an earpiece and white gloves. He moved with a precision that was terrifying. He walked straight toward me, his eyes locked on my face. I tightened my grip on my purse, ready to run back into the safety of the terminal. "Ms. Edwards," he said. His voice was deep and gravelly, like stones grinding together. He did not ask a question. He stated it as a fact. I hesitated, my throat dry. "Yes. Who are you?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black tablet. He tapped the screen and held it up. On the display was a digital copy of the poker chip I had in my pocket. The serial number matched exactly. "We have been waiting for you," the driver said, bowing his head slightly in a gesture of extreme respect. "The prince sends his regards. Please allow me to take your bag." I stood frozen. The prince. It sounded ridiculous, like a comic book villain, but the way this man said it made chills run down my spine. I looked at the open door of the middle SUV. The interior was glowing with soft amber light, revealing cream-colored leather seats and a crystal decanter of whiskey waiting on the console. This was not a ride for a tourist. This was a ride for royalty. "I am not sure I understand," I stammered. "My grandfather just gave me a ticket. I do not have a reservation." The driver smiled, a small, knowing smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "You do not need a reservation, Mom. You own the reservation. Your grandfather left very specific instructions for this night. He told us that when the girl with the $1 chip arrives, the game truly begins." He gestured to the open door with a white-gloved hand. "Welcome home, Ms. Edwards." The convoy sped toward the Atlantic City skyline, cutting through the coastal fog like a knife. Through the tinted windows, I saw the neon glow of the boardwalk, a chaotic mix of colors and desperate energy. But we did not head toward the fading casinos that lined the shore. Instead, the lead vehicle turned onto a private causeway that stretched out into the ocean, leading to a solitary island connected to the mainland by a bridge of steel and light. At the end of the bridge stood the Monarch. I had seen pictures of it in magazines, but reality was staggering. It was not just a casino. It was a fortress of black glass and gold leaf rising 50 stories into the night sky. It looked less like a place to gamble and more like a modern palace built for a king who valued privacy above all else. While other casinos screamed for attention with flashing lights, the Monarch glowed with a subtle, intimidating power. We bypassed the main entrance where limousines and taxis were jockeying for position. The driver steered us toward a massive iron gate marked private. The gate scanned the vehicle and swung open silently, allowing us to descend into a pristine underground tunnel. The walls were lined with polished white stone, and the lighting was soft and clinical. It felt like entering a vault. The SUV came to a halt in a private bay. The driver stepped out and opened my door. The air here was different. It did not smell of cigarettes and ocean salt. It smelled of white tea and cold, expensive marble. I stepped out, my heels clicking loudly on the polished floor. I smoothed down my skirt, suddenly conscious of the fraying hem and the scuff marks on my shoes. I was a discount shopper walking into a world of bespoke luxury. "This way, Ms. Edwards," the driver said, gesturing toward a set of double doors. As the doors opened, I stopped breathing. We were in a long corridor that led to a private elevator bank. But it was not empty. Lined up along the walls, perfectly spaced, were 24 staff members. There were security guards in earpieces, maids in crisp uniforms, and concierges in tailcoats. They stood with military posture, their hands clasped behind their backs. As I walked past them, a ripple of movement went down the line. One by one, they bowed their heads. It was not a casual nod. It was a gesture of deep reverence. "Good evening, Ms. Edwards," a security guard murmured as I passed. "Welcome home, Ms. Edwards," a maid whispered without making eye contact. My heart pounded against my ribs. I wanted to turn around and look behind me to see who they were talking to. Surely there was someone else. A celebrity, a politician, anyone but me. I was the girl who clipped coupons. I was the girl my mother called a mistake. But there was no one else. Their eyes followed me, filled with a mixture of curiosity and respect. They knew who I was. They knew something about me that I did not even know myself. I clutched my purse to my chest, using it as a shield. I felt like an imposter who had snuck onto a movie set. But beneath the fear, a tiny spark ignited in my chest. For 34 years, I had been invisible. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I was being seen. The driver pressed a button on the wall and the golden doors of the elevator slid open, revealing an interior lined with velvet. We stepped inside, leaving the bowing staff behind us. The doors closed, sealing me in. We began to rise toward the penthouse and toward the truth. The elevator doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space that was less like a hotel room and more like a fortress in the sky. The penthouse spanned the entire top floor with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a 360-degree view of the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the shore below. The room was dimly lit by crystal chandeliers and the glow of the city lights. Standing by a roaring fireplace was a man with silver hair and a suit that looked like armor. This was Mr. Rossi, known in whispers as the Prince. He turned as I entered, holding a tumbler of amber liquid. He did not smile, but his eyes held a warmth I had not expected. "You have his walk," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. Edward always walked like he owned the ground beneath his feet, even when he was losing. I stepped forward, my heels sinking into the plush carpet. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "And why did my grandfather send me here with a $1 chip?" Rossi took a sip of his drink and gestured to the window. "Look down there, Audrey. What do you see?" I walked to the glass. I saw the lights of the boardwalk, the traffic, the other casinos trying to compete with the grandeur of the Monarch. "I see a city built on hope and bad math," I replied. Rossi laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "Exactly. That is why he chose you. Your family sees glitter. You see the math." He walked over to a massive oak desk and picked up a framed photograph. It was a picture of him and my grandfather 40 years ago, standing on a construction site with hard hats. "Everyone thinks Edward Edwards made his fortune in shipping and packaging," Rossi said, placing the photo down. "That was the cover story. It was respectable. It was safe. It kept the IRS happy, and your mother in designer dresses. But this place, the Monarch, was his true masterpiece. He built this place from the sand up. He was the silent partner. I was the face, but he was the brain. He turned to me, his expression serious. Your mother and sister inherited the static assets, the houses, the boats, the public company. Those things depreciate. They require maintenance. They drain money. He pointed to the casino floor far below us, visible through a glass panel in the floor. But this is not an asset. This is a machine. It is a money-printing machine that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It does not rely on the stock market or the economy. It relies on human greed. And business has never been better. I felt the room spin. My grandfather had not left me out of the will. He had hidden the crown jewel and passed it to me under the table. But why the $1 chip? I asked, holding up the plastic disc. Rossi walked over and held out his hand. I gave him the chip. He walked to a painting on the wall and pressed a hidden button. The painting swung open, revealing a wall safe. He held the chip up to a scanner. The chip was not just plastic. It contained an embedded RFID key. The safe beeped and unlocked. Because a single dollar is all you need to start a game, Rossi said as the heavy steel door swung open. And he knew your family. He knew if he left you this place in the public, well, they would fight you for it. They would destroy it. So he gave them the shiny toys, and he gave you the kingdom. He pulled out a thick leather binder and placed it in my hands. It was heavy. Inside are the transfer deeds signed 5 years ago, Rossi said. Welcome to the throne, Ms. Edwards. You are now the majority shareholder of the most profitable casino on the East Coast. Now the question is, what do you want to do with the guests currently occupying your presidential suite? I took the brass key from Rossi. It was heavy, cold, and ancient-looking, a stark contrast to the high-tech scanner that had just identified the chip. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I walked over to the open wall safe. Inside, sitting on a velvet-lined shelf, were 2 thick stacks of documents bound in leather folders. I pulled out the first one. It was heavy. I opened the cover, and the smell of old paper and fresh ink wafted up. My eyes scanned the legal jargon, but the numbers jumped out at me. Certificate of Ownership. 51% of Class A voting shares in the Monarch Casino and Resort. Beneficiary Audrey Edwards. I ran my fingers over the embossed seal. It was real. I did not just work here. I did not just own a piece of it. I was the majority owner. I could fire the board. I could change the logo. I could turn the entire place into a homeless shelter if I wanted to. For the first time in my life, I felt the heavy, comforting weight of absolute power. But there is more, Rossi said, stepping closer. Look at the second folder. That is the one that will interest you the most. I reached for the second stack. It was thinner but felt more dangerous. The label on the front read, Edwards Packaging Acquisition of Distressed Debt. My heart skipped a beat. Edwards Packaging was the family company, the one Tyson and Courtney were currently bragging about inheriting. I flipped through the pages. I saw loan agreements, credit lines, and mortgage deeds. But as I looked closer, I realized something terrifying. The company was not profitable. It was bleeding money. For the last 5 years, my mother and sister had been draining the accounts to fund their lavish lifestyles. The company was technically bankrupt. But here was the twist. The banks had sold the bad debt, and the buyer was a holding company called Grand Gambit LLC. I looked up at Rossi, my eyes wide. Who owns Grand Gambit LLC? Rossi smiled and pointed at the first folder in my hand. You do. Your grandfather set it up 10 years ago. He knew they would run the business into the ground, so he quietly bought up every loan, every mortgage, and every credit line they defaulted on. He became their bank. And now you are their bank. I looked back down at the papers, my breath caught in my throat. I held the deed to their Hamptons house. I held the lien on the yacht. I held the note on the factory. They were walking around acting like billionaires, but they were living in houses that I owned, driving cars that I financed, and spending money that they effectively owed to me. So they are not just broke, I whispered, the realization settling over me like a warm blanket. They are my debtors. Precisely, Rossi said, pouring himself another drink. They are dancing on a trapdoor, Audrey, and you are the only one with the key to the release mechanism. You can foreclose on them tomorrow. You can seize everything. Or you can let them play a few hands first. I closed the folder with a snap. The sound echoed in the quiet room. A slow smile spread across my face. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who had been the punchline of a joke for 30 years and had just realized she was the one writing the script. Let them play, I said, turning to look out the window at the city below. I want to see how high they climb before I pull the rug out. I spent the next hour poring over the documents, spreading them out on the massive oak desk, like a general mapping a battlefield. The numbers told a story that was more scandalous than any tabloid headline. My mother's art collection was leveraged to 90% of its value. The Hamptons house had 3 mortgages on it. Tyson's hedge fund performance was a work of fiction. He was paying old investors with new money, a classic Ponzi scheme that was months away from collapsing. For years I had felt small. I drove a dented car. I shopped at discount stores. I felt shame every time I walked into their gleaming mansions. But looking at these balance sheets, the shame evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. They were not rich, they were drowning. And my grandfather had thrown them an anchor that was actually tied to my wrist. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror near the fireplace. The woman staring back at me looked tired. Her blazer was cheap, her hair was messy. But her eyes were different. The fear was gone. The hesitation was gone. I took off my blazer and threw it onto the chair. I undid the bun in my hair, letting it fall loose. Mr. Rossi watched me from the bar. "You are seeing it now, aren't you?" he asked quietly. I turned to him. "They have nothing," I said. "They are actors on a stage and the curtain is about to fall." Rossi nodded. "And you are the director. So how do you want to play this scene?" I looked down at the casino floor, through the glass panel again. I watched the people below putting their faith in luck. My family did not believe in luck. They believed they were entitled to win. That was their weakness. They would walk into this casino thinking they owned it. They would bet big because they thought they had a safety net. They did not know I had already cut the ropes. "I do not want to just foreclose on them," I said, my voice steady and low. "That is too easy. That is just business. This is personal. I want them to feel what I felt. I want them to feel the humiliation of being powerless. I want them to bet everything they have and watch it vanish." I walked back to the desk and picked up the phone. I dialed the number for the VIP services department. When the concierge answered, I did not hesitate. "This is Audrey Edwards," I said. My voice sounded different, deeper, more authoritative. "I am authorizing a credit line for Tyson and Courtney. Give them the Emperor Suite. Comp their meals. Give them the best champagne. Let them think they are royalty." There was a pause on the other end, then a professional voice replied, "Yes, Ms. Edwards. Is there a limit on the credit line?" I looked at the file labeled distressed debt one last time. "No limit," I said. "Let them dig as deep a hole as they want. I will be there to bury them." I hung up the phone. The victim was dead. The predator had just woken up. I turned to Rossi. "I need a new wardrobe. If I am going to play the villain, I should dress the part." The silence of the penthouse was broken by a sharp, urgent chime from the black console on the desk. It was not a telephone ring. It was the specific alert tone reserved for high-priority notifications. Mr. Rossi walked over to the desk and tapped the screen. His eyebrows shot up and a dark amusement settled in his eyes. He turned the screen toward me so I could see the alert flashing in red. "It seems your family moves fast," Rossi said. "Faster than we anticipated." I looked at the display. A reservation had just been logged in the system. The name on the booking was Patricia Edwards. The arrival date was this coming Friday. But it was the details of the booking that made me laugh, a dry, humorless sound. They had booked the Emperor Suite. It was the crown jewel of the monarch. A 4-bedroom palace with a private pool, a personal butler, and a balcony that overlooked the entire Atlantic Ocean. The price tag was $25,000 a night. They had booked it for 3 nights, $75,000 just for a place to sleep. "But look at the payment method," Rossi said, pointing to the bottom of the screen. I leaned in. The credit card on file was a corporate American Express issued to Edwards Packaging, the very company that was currently suffocating under a mountain of debt. Next to the card number was a flashing warning light. The system flagged it, Rossi explained. The card is near its limit. It has less than $5,000 of available credit remaining. The automated system is about to decline the reservation. He hovered his finger over the deny button. Should I let the system do its job? We can reject the booking right now. They will be embarrassed at the front desk, or they will be forced to stay at a Motel 6 down the highway. I reached out and caught his wrist. No, I said, my voice sharp. Do not decline it. I stared at the screen. If we decline the card, they might stay home. They might save their money. They might escape the trap. I needed them here. I needed them comfortable. I needed them reckless. Override the limit, I commanded. Force the authorization through. Increase their credit line on the hotel system. Let them think the card is bottomless. Rossi looked at me, his eyes gleaming with approval. You want them to dig the hole deeper. I walked back to the window, looking out at the bridge that connected the island to the mainland. I want them to feel like royalty, I said. I want them to order the most expensive wine. I want them to book the spa treatments. I want them to think they are spending corporate money. They do not realize that since I own the debt of the company, every dollar they spend on that card is a dollar they are stealing from me, and I am going to make them pay it back with interest. I turned back to Rossi. Approve the booking. Send them a confirmation email with a personal note from the management welcoming our most distinguished guests. Make sure they feel special. Rossi tapped the screen. The red warning light turned green. Confirmed. The Emperor Suite is theirs. Perfect, I whispered. They are coming to my house to spend my money. And they have no idea that the maid who turns down their bed might just be the owner of the building. The trap is set. Now we just wait for the mice to arrive. The briefing room on the 49th floor was a windowless bunker of polished steel and glowing monitors. It was the nervous system of the monarch, where every card dealt and every drink poured could be tracked in real time. I stood at the head of the long obsidian table. 12 people sat before me. They were the department heads, the pit bosses, the security chiefs, and the hospitality directors. Yesterday, I would have been too intimidated to ask them for directions to the bathroom. Today, I was their commander-in-chief. Mr. Rossi stood to my right, acting as my enforcer. He cleared his throat and the room went deadly silent. This is Ms. Edwards, he announced. She speaks with the full authority of the ownership. Her word is final. I looked at the faces around the table. They were hardened professionals who had seen every scam and hustler on the East Coast. They were waiting to see if I was soft. I placed my hands on the table and leaned forward. We have a VIP arrival on Friday, I began, my voice steady. The Edwards party, my mother's sister and brother-in-law. Marcus, the head of security, tapped his tablet. I see the flag on their accounts, Ms. Edwards. Their credit rating is abysmal and the corporate card is maxed out. Standard protocol is to deny entry or require a cash deposit up front. I can have a team meet them at the door and turn them away. No, I said, cutting him off. That is exactly what you will not do. I walked over to the large screen displaying the casino floor. If you stop them at the door, they leave with their pride intact. They will spin a story about how this place was not good enough for them. I do not want them turned away. I want them welcomed. I want them seduced. I turned back to the team. We are going to execute a reverse protocol. Usually we protect the house from bad debt. This weekend we are going to encourage it. I pointed to the director of hospitality. When they arrive, I want the full red carpet treatment. Upgrade them to black diamond status immediately. Tell them it is a courtesy for high net worth individuals. Feed their ego. If they ask for vintage champagne, you bring the bottle that costs $5,000. If they want a private shopper, you send the best one we have. Do not ask for a credit card authorization. Charge everything to the room. I shifted my gaze to the pit boss, a man with eyes like a hawk. Tyson fancies himself a whale. He is going to want high limits. Give them to him. If he wants to bet $50,000 on a single hand of blackjack, let him. If he wants to double down on a bad hand, let him. We are not here to cheat them. We do not need to. Their own arrogance will do the work for us. But Ms. Edwards, Marcus interjected, his brow furrowed. If they lose big and they cannot pay, we are looking at a significant loss for the house. I smiled a cold smile that felt surprisingly natural. You are forgetting who holds their debt, Marcus. I am the bank. If they lose money to the casino, they are just moving it from one of my pockets to the other. But in the process, they are signing away their freedom. I looked around the room one last time. I want cameras on them constantly. I want audio recording in the suite. I want to know every word they say. They are walking into a lion's den, thinking it is a petting zoo. Do not let them see the teeth until it is too late. Now go make them feel like royalty. The team nodded in unison, closing their folders. They respected the plan. It was ruthless. It was calculated. It was exactly what my grandfather would have done. As they filed out of the room, I looked at the empty chair at the end of the table. The trap was set. All we needed now was the prey. I stood before the full-length mirror in the master suite, but I did not recognize the reflection staring back at me. The Audrey who wore oversized cardigans to hide herself was gone. In her place stood a woman who looked like she could cut steel with her gaze. I smoothed the lapels of the charcoal gray suit that Mr. Rossi had commissioned for me. It was Italian wool tailored to within an inch of its life, fitting my frame like a second skin. The skirt was pencil straight, ending just above the knee, and the blazer was sharp enough to draw blood. I sat at the vanity and pulled my hair back into a severe, flawless bun. Not a single strand was out of place. I applied a coat of dark red lipstick. It was not makeup. It was war paint. I slipped on a pair of black stiletto heels. They added 3 inches to my height, but more importantly, they changed the way I walked. I did not shuffle anymore. I stalked. I left the penthouse and took the private elevator down to the mezzanine level. This was a floor that did not exist on the guest maps. The doors opened, revealing a heavy steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." I placed my palm on the scanner. The light turned green and the lock disengaged with a heavy thud. I stepped into the surveillance room known affectionately by the staff as the Eye in the Sky. It was a dark, cavernous space, illuminated only by the cool blue glow of 300 high-definition monitors covering every square inch of the walls. The hum of computer servers was the only sound, a low, constant vibration that felt like the heartbeat of the casino. Dozens of surveillance agents sat in rows, their faces bathed in the light of the screens, watching every deal, every spin, and every handshake on the floor below. As I walked down the center aisle, they did not turn around. They were too disciplined. But I could feel the tension in the room. They knew the owner was present. Mr. Rossi was waiting for me at the main console. He handed me a wireless earpiece. I clipped it onto my ear and adjusted the microphone. "All units check in," I said, my voice crisp and commanding. One by one, the department heads responded in my ear. "Valet ready, front desk ready, VIP services standing by, floor security holding position." I looked up at the main wall of monitors. In the center was a live feed of the main entrance. The circular driveway was empty, waiting. The golden doors of the Monarch were polished to a shine, ready to reflect the greed of anyone who walked through them. I checked the time on the wall clock. It was Friday afternoon. The sun was beginning to set over the Atlantic, casting long shadows across the entrance. My heart should have been racing with fear. Instead, it was beating with a slow, rhythmic anticipation. I was not the prey anymore. I was the spider sitting in the center of the web, feeling for the slightest vibration. "Target approaching," the valet manager whispered in my ear. "Black limousine. New York plates." I leaned forward, resting my hands on the console. My eyes locked onto the screen. A sleek black car pulled into the frame. The back door opened. "Showtime," I whispered. "Let the games begin." The automatic doors of the limousine slid open, and the first thing to emerge was a pair of snakeskin stilettos, followed closely by the screeching voice of my mother. Patricia stepped onto the red carpet of the Monarch, not looking at the grandeur of the architecture, but inspecting the cleanliness of the ground. A young bellhop, barely 20 years old, rushed forward to assist with the luggage. He reached for a monogrammed Louis Vuitton trunk that was sitting in the trunk of the car. Do not touch that, Patricia shrieked, slapping the boy's hand away, as if he were a thief. That leather is custom made from Italy. Your gloves look filthy. Get a cart, and do not let it bump against anything, or I will have your job. The boy recoiled, his face flushing red. I am sorry, Mom, I was just trying to help. Patricia ignored him, turning to Courtney, who was already live streaming their arrival. Make sure you get the fountain in the shot, Courtney. I want the people back in New York to see what real luxury looks like. Courtney pouted at her phone screen, adjusting her filter. Hey guys, we just arrived at the Monarch. It is okay, I guess, but wait until you see our suite. We literally own this place this weekend. Behind them, Tyson emerged, adjusting the lapels of a suit that was too tight for him. He looked around the lobby with a sneer of appraisal. He was not looking at the beauty of the design. He was looking for someone to intimidate. He spotted the front desk and marched toward it, cutting the line in front of an elderly couple. He slammed his hand on the marble counter, making the receptionist jump. Name is Edwards, Tyson Edwards. And before you ask, yes, I am that Edwards. We have a reservation for the Emperor Suite. The receptionist, a woman named Sarah, who I had briefed personally earlier that morning, did not flinch. She typed on her keyboard, her face a mask of professional politeness. Yes, Mr. Edwards. We have been expecting you. Tyson leaned over the counter, invading her personal space. You better have been. I do not have time for paperwork. I run a multi-million-dollar hedge fund in Manhattan. My time is worth $5,000 a minute, so let us speed this up. He pulled out the black corporate American Express card, the one that was technically maxed out, and slid it across the counter like he was dealing a winning hand. Put everything on this. And I mean everything. If I look at a bottle of water, I want you to charge it. Sarah took the card. Under normal circumstances, she would have run a pre-authorization check that would have declined immediately. But today she followed my orders. She pretended to swipe it and simply handed it back with a bright smile. Of course, Mr. Edwards. Your credit is good here. In fact, management has flagged your account as VVIP. We have bypassed the usual credit checks for a man of your stature. Tyson turned to Patricia and Courtney with a smug grin. You see that? That is respect. In New York, I am a shark, but down here I am the king. They know who holds the power. Sarah handed him the golden keycards. Please enjoy your stay. Your butler is waiting at the elevator. Tyson snatched the keys without saying thank you. He turned to the bellhop, who was struggling with the mountain of luggage. Hey kid, move it. If those bags are not in my room in 5 minutes, do not expect a tip. Not that I was going to give you one anyway. They marched toward the elevators, leaving a wake of chaos and expensive perfume behind them. High above in the surveillance room, I watched the feed on the monitor. Tyson looked like a king ascending to his throne. He had no idea he was walking straight into a guillotine. An hour later, the elevator doors to the private VIP lobby slid open. The Edwards family stepped out, looking like they were attending the Met Gala. Tyson was wearing a tuxedo that shimmered under the lights a little too aggressively. Patricia was draped in a floor-length gold gown that clashed with her orange spray tan, and she was wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country. Courtney wore a dress that was barely there, clutching a crystal-encrusted clutch in one hand and her phone in the other. They walked onto the casino floor expecting applause. Instead, they got the low hum of concentration and the chiming of slot machines. The air was thick with tension and money. I adjusted my earpiece, straightened my blazer, and stepped out from behind a marble pillar blocking their path. Good evening, I said, my voice smooth and professional. Welcome to the high-limit floor. They stopped dead in their tracks. For a second they looked confused, as if their brains could not process why I was there. Then Courtney let out a shriek that turned heads 3 tables away. Oh my God, she gasped, pointing a manicured finger at me. You have got to be kidding me. Audrey, is that you? She turned to Patricia and burst into laughter. Mom, look at her cheap suit. This is priceless. The plane ticket. It was not a vacation. It was a job placement program. Grandpa sent her here to be a waitress. Patricia scanned me up and down, her lip curling in disgust. Well, I suppose it makes sense. He always said you needed to learn the value of hard work. I just did not think he meant fetching drinks for people like us. Although I must admit the uniform fits you, it is very service industry. Tyson stepped forward, looking at me with amused pity. So you are working here. What is the title? Chip polisher, bathroom attendant. I am the floor manager for the VIP section, I replied, keeping my face neutral. My job is to ensure our most distinguished guests have everything they need to lose. I mean to play comfortably. Courtney was typing furiously on her phone, probably updating her status to tell the world her sister was the hired help. This is actually perfect, she said. We were worried about service, but now we have our own personal servant. Hey, Odds, can you get me a vodka soda, make it strong, and try not to spill it on my shoes? They cost more than your annual salary. I smiled. It was a genuine smile because I knew exactly what was coming next. Of course, Ms. Edwards. I will have a server bring that right over. But first, let me show you to your table. We have reserved the center baccarat table for you. It has the highest limits in the house. Tyson puffed out his chest. Now you are talking. Lead the way, employee. And try to keep up. I turned and walked toward the center of the pit. They followed me, strutting like peacocks. They thought they were the kings of the jungle. They did not realize they were following the hunter straight into the cage. Every step they took was a step closer to ruin, and I was going to enjoy watching them fall. The velvet rope was unhooked, and Tyson slid into the center chair of the baccarat table like he was sliding into a throne. He adjusted his cufflinks and placed the golden keycard on the green felt. Courtney sat to his left, immediately finding the perfect lighting for her selfie, while Patricia took the seat on his right, smoothing out her gold gown. They looked like royalty, but I knew they were just court jesters in expensive costumes. I stood by the edge of the table holding a small silver tray, waiting for the dealer to finish shuffling the cards. I was invisible to them until Patricia realized her hands were empty. She snapped her fingers, a sharp sound that cut through the ambient noise of the casino. Audrey. She barked, not even turning her head to look at me. Do not just stand there hovering like a bad omen. Make yourself useful. Go get me a drink, a dirty martini with 3 olives. Grey Goose. And be quick about it. She turned to the other players at the table, a forced smile plastered on her face. My daughter is learning the family business from the bottom up. We believe in tough love. It builds character. Tyson laughed loudly. Yeah, she is starting at the very bottom. Hey, Audrey, get me a scotch. Blue label. Neat. And do not water it down. I know how you employees like to save a buck. I felt a flash of anger hot and sharp in my chest. I wanted to tell them that I owned the bottle of scotch they were ordering. I wanted to tell them that I could have security throw them out into the street in 30 seconds, but I swallowed the rage. I forced it down until it settled in my stomach like a cold stone. This was part of the plan. If I fought back now, they would put up their guard. I needed them relaxed. I needed them drunk. I walked to the private service bar in the corner of the VIP pit. The bartender was a man named Leo who had worked at the Monarch for 20 years. He saw me approaching and immediately straightened his tie. He knew exactly who I was. Ms. Edwards, he whispered, leaning over the bar. Do you want me to cut them off? I can tell security they are intoxicated. I shook my head. No, Leo. I want you to do the opposite. Give them the best. Pour the drink strong. Keep their glasses full. I want them feeling invincible. Leo nodded, understanding the silent command in my eyes. He mixed the martini with precision and poured a generous measure of the $600 scotch. I placed the drinks on the tray and walked back to the table. Here you go, Mother, I said, placing the glass on a coaster in front of her. Patricia did not say thank you. She picked up the glass and took a sip, scrutinizing the taste. Well, at least you can follow simple instructions, she sneered. Maybe there is hope for you yet. Now step back. You are crowding the table. We are about to make some real money. I took 3 steps back, melting into the shadows. I watched as Tyson pushed a stack of chips into the center of the table. He was smiling. He was confident. He was drinking my scotch and breathing my air. Drink up, Mother, I thought to myself. Enjoy the taste of victory. It is the last thing you will taste before the poison sets in. The game is on. Tyson pulled out the chair at the blackjack table and sat down with the heavy sigh of a man burdened by his own importance. He cracked his knuckles loudly and looked around the VIP pit, ensuring that he had an audience. When he saw that the other high rollers were ignoring him, he turned his attention to me. I was standing a few feet back trying to blend into the woodwork, but Tyson was not done with me yet. "Hey, Audrey, come closer," he commanded, snapping his fingers. "Do not hide in the shadows. If you want to get out of that cheap apartment and stop driving that rust bucket, you need to learn how the real world works. Stand right here next to me. Consider this a free seminar on wealth creation." I stepped forward, stopping just behind his left shoulder. I clasped my hands behind my back, adopting the pose of a dutiful servant. Under my breath, I whispered so only the dealer could hear, "Let him play." Tyson did not notice the exchange. He was too busy stacking his chips. He had $50,000 in front of him, credit that I had authorized just minutes ago. He picked up a stack of black chips and began shuffling them, one-handed, a trick he had probably practiced in front of a mirror to look like a professional gambler. "You see, Audrey," he said, his voice booming across the quiet table. "The problem with people like you is that you play it safe. You hoard pennies, you clip coupons. You are afraid to lose, so you never win. The rich do not operate like that. We understand leverage. We understand that you have to risk big to win big." He looked up at the dealer, a man named Marcus who had been dealing blackjack since before Tyson was born. Marcus stood stone-faced, waiting for the bet. Tyson pushed a stack of chips into the betting circle. $5,000. One hand. "Scared money makes no money," Tyson quoted, looking back at me with a smirk. "Write that down, Audrey. It might help you when you are budgeting for your groceries next week." Courtney leaned in, holding her phone up to capture the moment. "Tell them baby she cooed. Show them how an Edwards plays. This is going for the highlights reel." Tyson winked at the camera. "Watch and learn, folks. This is how we pay for the yacht." He tapped the table. "Deal the cards." Marcus looked at me for a split second. His eyes asked a silent question. Should I crush him now? I kept my face impassive, but gave a microscopic shake of my head. Not yet. The trap was not to crush him immediately. The trap was to let him believe his own lie, to let him believe that he was touched by gold. Marcus dealt the cards. He slid 2 cards to Tyson face up, a king of diamonds and a 9 of spades. 19, a strong hand. Marcus showed his own up card, a 6. Tyson laughed, a loud barking sound. "See that, Audrey? That is called instinct. I sit down and the cards just come to me." He waved his hand, dismissing the hit. "I will stand. Let us see you bust, dealer." I watched the cards. I knew the math. I knew the odds. But more importantly, I knew that for the next hour, the laws of probability were going to be suspended. Tyson was about to go on the run of a lifetime, and he was going to think it was all because of his genius. He had no idea that I was the one deciding his fate. Teach me, Tyson, I thought. Teach me how high you can fly before your wax wings melt. I stood motionless behind Tyson's left shoulder, blending into the background like a piece of furniture. I caught Marcus the dealer eye across the green felt. I reached up and smoothed the lapel of my jacket with 2 fingers. It was a subtle gesture that no one else would notice, but for a veteran dealer like Marcus, it was a direct order. The command was simple. Feed the beast. Marcus nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and slid the cards out of the shoe with fluid, practiced movements. Tyson was sitting on a soft 17. The dealer showed a 10. "Hit me!" Tyson barked, tapping the table aggressively. Marcus slid a 4 toward him. 21. Tyson jumped out of his chair, slamming his fist onto the leather rail. "Boom!" he yelled, his voice echoing across the casino floor. "Read them and weep, boys. That is how you play the game." Courtney shrieked with delight, zooming her camera in on the pile of chips being pushed toward her husband. "Oh my God, babe, you are literally printing money," she squealed. "We are going to buy everything tomorrow." I watched as Tyson stacked his winnings, his hands shaking slightly with the dopamine rush. He looked at me with a sneer. "Are you watching this, Audrey? This is called talent. You cannot learn this in community college." I kept my face blank. "Very impressive, Mr. Edwards. The next hand was even better. Tyson was dealt a natural blackjack. He threw his head back and howled like a wolf. The pit boss came over to congratulate him, playing his part in the charade perfectly. "Mr. Edwards, you are on fire tonight," the pit boss said, signaling for a waitress to bring another round of drinks. "We might have to close the table if you keep this up." Tyson puffed out his chest, his ego swelling with every chip that clattered into his stack. "You do not close the table on a winner," he declared, grabbing his glass of scotch. "I am just getting started. I am seeing the Matrix right now. I know what card is coming before you even touch it." He won the third hand, then the fourth, then the fifth. It was a statistical anomaly that we had carefully engineered. With every win, his caution evaporated. The Tyson who had started with $5,000 bets was gone. In his place was a man who believed he was a god. Patricia leaned over, stroking Tyson's arm possessively. "You are doing wonderful, darling," she purred. "Keep going. We need a new summer house in the vineyard, and I think you just won the down payment." She turned to me, her eyes cold. "Keep the drinks coming, Audrey. It is the least you can do since you are not contributing anything to this family." Tyson looked at the tower of black and purple chips in front of him. He had won over $100,000 in 20 minutes. He was drunk on success and expensive scotch. "I am invincible," he muttered, his eyes wide and feverish. He looked at the dealer. "No more baby bets. I want the limit. What is the maximum on this table?" $50,000, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady. Tyson laughed, a manic sound that made the other players nervous. He shoved 2 tall stacks of purple chips into the center of the circle. "50,000 it is," Tyson announced. "Deal the cards. I am going to break this bank." I watched the chips slide across the felt. He had taken the bait. The hook was set deep in his jaw. Now it was time to reel him in. Tyson leaned back in his leather chair, spreading his arms wide, as if to embrace the entire casino. He looked at the tower of purple and black chips stacked in front of him. It was a fortress of wealth built in less than 15 minutes. He picked up a handful of chips and let them rain down onto the felt, the clatter drawing the attention of everyone in the VIP pit. "Did you see that, Audrey?" he sneered, pointing a finger at the pile. "I just made $150,000 in 10 minutes. How long does it take you to earn that at your little insurance job? A year? 2 years?" He did not wait for an answer. He turned to Courtney, who was still filming. "Babe, do the math for her. If she makes 60 grand a year, which is generous for someone with her lack of ambition, it would take her almost 3 years of slaving away to make what I just made while drinking a scotch." Courtney giggled, zooming in on my face. "Ah, do not be mean, Tyson. She works hard. Someone has to file the paperwork and make the coffee." I stood there accepting their abuse like a statue. I did not flinch. I did not frown. I kept a polite, professional smile plastered on my face. Inside, I was calculating. Every insult was another line item on the invoice I would present to them later. "You are absolutely right, Mr. Edwards," I said, my voice calm and deferential. "I could never do what you do. You have a gift. I have never seen anyone read a deck like that." Tyson preened, adjusting his silk bow tie. He took a long swallow of his drink. "At least you admit it. Most people are jealous. You should take notes. Maybe you will learn something." I took a half step closer, lowering my voice so it sounded intimate, conspiratorial. "I am learning, Mr. Edwards, but I have to ask. If you are truly seeing the Matrix right now, if you know exactly what cards are coming, why are you betting so small?" Tyson froze. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "Small," he repeated. "I am betting 50,000 a hand. That is the table limit." "For a normal guest, yes," I whispered. "But you are not a normal guest. You are a whale. You are the king of New York. A man with your instinct should not be restricted by the rules made for tourists." I saw the greed flare in his eyes. It battled with a tiny flicker of self-preservation, but the greed won instantly. "What are you saying, Audrey?" "I am saying that as the floor manager, I have the authority to lift the cap," I replied, lying smoothly. "I can authorize a no-limit game. You could bet 100,000, 200,000. You could double your net worth in a single hand. Unless, of course, you are afraid your luck has run out." The table went deadly silent. The other players stopped their conversations. Patricia put down her martini, looking at Tyson with a mix of fear and excitement. Tyson looked at me. He looked at the chips. He looked at Courtney, who was nodding encouragingly. His ego was a balloon, and I had just pumped it full of helium. Afraid, he scoffed, slamming his glass down. I am not afraid of anything. I am on fire. Why should I use a bucket when I can use a fire hose? He stood up, his eyes wild. Do it. Lift the limit. I want to break this bank. I want to own this casino by midnight. I nodded to the pit boss, who was watching me with a pale face. Open the table, I commanded. No limit for Mr. Edwards. I turned back to Tyson. The ceiling is gone. The sky is the limit. Good luck, sir. Luck is for losers, Audrey, he spat, pushing his entire stack into the center of the table. I create my own destiny. I stepped back into the shadows, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. He was right. He was creating his own destiny. He just did not realize it was a tragedy. The atmosphere around the table was electric. Tyson had pushed a tower of chips worth $200,000 into the center of the betting circle. It was an aggressive, reckless bet, the kind that makes casinos rich and families poor. He looked at me with a smirk that was equal parts arrogance and intoxication. Watch this, Audrey, he boasted. This is how legends are made. I looked at the chips. Then I looked at Marcus, the dealer. He was holding the shoe, ready to draw the first card. The entire pit was watching, holding its breath. It was time. I reached out and tapped the green felt twice with my index finger. It was a subtle movement, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. But to the staff of the monarch, it was a command that carried the weight of God. It meant, kill the streak. Marcus paused. He did not deal the card. Instead, he set the shoe down and stepped back. House check, he announced, his voice cutting through the noise. Changing the shoe. Tyson slammed his fist onto the leather rail. What are you doing? You are killing the vibe. Just deal the damn card. Protocol. Mr. Edwards, I said, stepping forward calmly. For bets of this magnitude, we are required to switch to a fresh deck. To ensure fairness. Tyson groaned, rolling his eyes at Courtney, who had stopped filming. Unbelievable. Fine. Just hurry up so I can take your money. Marcus swapped the cards with mechanical precision. The flow was broken. The rhythm was gone. The new cards were shuffled, cut, and loaded. The game resumed. Marcus dealt. Tyson looked at his hand. A 12. The dealer showed a 10. Hit me, Tyson grunted. Marcus slid a card across the felt. A queen. Bust. The dealer swept the massive pile of chips into the tray. The sound of plastic clattering against plastic was deafening in the sudden silence. $200,000 vanished in seconds. Tyson blinked, staring at the empty spot on the table where his fortune had been. He laughed, a dry, nervous sound. Just a warm-up. Cannot win them all, right? He reached into his remaining stack. Double or nothing. He bet again. This time he got a 17. Marcus drew a 20. Lost. The laughter at the table died. Patricia put down her martini glass, the stem clicking against the coaster. Courtney lowered her phone. The energy in the room shifted from a party to a funeral. Tyson loosened his tie. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. He was chasing the loss now. The most dangerous state for a gambler. One more, he snarled, pushing the rest of his chips forward. This is it. I can feel it. He lost again. I watched him. The arrogance was melting away, replaced by a frantic desperation. He was not looking at me with pity anymore. He was looking at the cards with hatred. He did not know that luck had nothing to do with it. He was fighting gravity, and I controlled the physics of this room. Whatever you are doing, stop it, he hissed at the dealer. Give me a new setup. This deck is cursed. I stepped closer, my voice soft and helpful. Perhaps you should take a break, Mr. Edwards. Walk away while you still have your watch. He turned on me, his eyes bloodshot. I am not going anywhere. I am not leaving until I get my money back. Give me more chips. Put it on the room. I looked at the pit boss and nodded slowly. Give him what he wants. The slide had begun, and Tyson was greasing the wheels himself. The slide was not a gentle slope, it was a cliff. Tyson played with the desperation of a man who believed the universe owed him a refund. He was trapped in the gambler's fallacy, the fatal belief that a losing streak must eventually result in a win. But the cards were cold and unyielding. Every time Marcus swept the chips away, Tyson's face grew redder, his breathing more ragged. He doubled down on bad hands. He split tens against an ace. He made every rookie mistake in the book, convinced that his genius would override the math. Courtney had stopped filming. There was no filter that could make this look good. She sat scrolling through her feed, ignoring the carnage happening inches from her elbow. Patricia was the only one watching closely. Her eyes darted from Tyson's dwindling stack to the dealer's tray, calculating the losses. She leaned in, whispering urgently, "Tyson, maybe we should take a break. We can go to dinner. We can start fresh tomorrow." Tyson slammed his hand on the table, making the remaining chips jump. "Shut up, Patricia," he snarled. "I am not leaving this table a loser. The tide is about to turn. I can feel it." He pushed his last stack forward. It was $25,000, a fortune to most people, a single hand of cards to him. "Deal," he commanded. Marcus dealt. Tyson showed 19. A good hand. He smirked, looking at me. "See, Audrey. Here it comes." Marcus flipped his card. 20. Tyson stared at the cards. He blinked once, then twice. He reached out to grab the chips, but Marcus was faster. The rake moved across the felt, pulling the last of the Edwards inheritance into the box. The table was empty. The green felt looked vast and barren. Tyson sat there, his hands still extended, grasping at nothing but air. He looked at his watch, then at his empty glass, then at me. The arrogance was still there, but it was brittle now, like cracked glass. "I am out of chips," he said, his voice flat. I stepped forward from the shadows. "That concludes the session, Mr. Edwards. I can have the valet bring your car around if you wish to retire for the evening." Tyson laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Retire? I am not retiring. I am just reloading. I need a marker." I paused, letting the request hang in the air. "A marker? Mr. Edwards, you wish to open a line of credit with the house?" "Yes," Tyson snapped, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "A credit line. I am good for it. You know who I am. You know what my family owns. I want 500,000. Patricia gasped. "Tyson, that is $500,000. Are you sure?" Tyson turned on her, his eyes wild. "Do you want the summer house or not? Do you want to be rich, or do you want to be comfortable? I am going to win it all back in one shoe. I just need capital." He looked back at me. "Get the paperwork, Audrey. Unless you do not have the authority to handle real money." I looked at the pit boss. He was holding a clipboard, the credit agreement already attached. I took it and placed it in front of Tyson along with a heavy gold pen. "As the floor manager, I can authorize this immediately," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Just sign here, here, and here. By signing this, you agree that this debt is personal and immediate, payable upon demand." Tyson did not even read the terms. He snatched the pen and scribbled his signature across the lines. He was signing away his future, but all he saw were the chips coming back to him. "Done," he said, tossing the pen back to me. "Now fill me up." I handed the clipboard to the pit boss. "Give Mr. Edwards his chips," I ordered, "and bring him another scotch." The game continues. The moment the fresh tray of chips hit the table, the dynamic shifted. Tyson was no longer just a player, he was the bank for the rest of the family. He tossed a stack of purple chips to Patricia and another to Courtney, like he was feeding pigeons in the park. "Here," he shouted, his voice cracking with adrenaline. "Everyone plays. We are going to attack this table from all sides. Mom, you play the side bets. Courtney, you play the pairs. I will handle the main hand. We cannot lose if we cover every angle." It was a strategy born of madness and greed. Patricia grabbed the chips, her hands trembling. She did not look like the sophisticated socialite from the Upper East Side anymore. She looked feral. She started throwing chips onto the lucky lady's side bet, a wager with terrible odds but a high payout. "Come on," she hissed at the cards. "Mama needs a new pair of earrings." Courtney shoved her phone into her purse. She was done documenting the night. Now she was part of the action. She bet heavily on the perfect pair option, convinced that her intuition was better than the math. For a few minutes, the table was a chaotic flurry of hands and shouting. But the house always wins, especially when the house is angry. Marcus dealt the cards with the cold efficiency of an executioner. Patricia lost her first stack, then her second. Courtney watched her pile vanish in 3 hands. "This is rigged!" Courtney screamed, slamming her hand on the felt. "How can I lose 4 times in a row?" Tyson ignored them. He was losing his own war. The $500,000 was melting away like ice in the desert. He was down to his last 50,000. Patricia grabbed Tyson's arm, digging her nails into his suit jacket. "Give me more chips, Tyson. I almost had it that time. I can feel the vibration changing." "I do not have any more," Mom Tyson snapped, shaking her off. "I am trying to save us here." Patricia looked around wildly. Her eyes landed on the diamond necklace she was wearing. It was a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother, a piece she had sworn never to sell. She ripped it from her neck, the clasp snapping with a sharp pop. "Audrey," she yelled, holding the glittering diamonds over the table. "This is worth $80,000. I want chips for it. Right now." The pit boss looked at me. Normally, casinos do not accept jewelry at the table. But this was not a normal night. I stepped forward. "We can appraise that at $50,000, Mrs. Edwards," I said calmly, "as a special courtesy to our VIP guests." "Do it!" Patricia shrieked, throwing the necklace onto the green felt. I nodded to the pit boss. He took the necklace and slid a stack of chips toward her. She did not even hesitate. She pushed the entire stack onto the next hand. She lost. Courtney followed suit, unclasping her Cartier bracelet. "This is 20 grand. Take it. I want in." "Accepted," I said. 2 minutes later, the jewelry was gone, locked away in the drop box. The chips were gone, swept into the dealer's tray. They stood there panting, stripping themselves of their wealth piece by piece. They were naked in their greed. "Tyson." Patricia gasped, grabbing his lapels. "You have to fix this. We cannot leave without my necklace. Get more money. Sign another marker." "But Mom..." "I already owe $500,000. Tyson stammered, his face pale. "Who cares?" Courtney screamed. "You are the CEO. You are good for it. Sign for another $1,000,000. We just need one good run. Just one." Tyson looked at the empty table. He looked at his wife and mother-in-law, who were looking at him like he was their savior. He looked at me, standing silently with the pen in my hand. "Give me the pen," he whispered. "I am going to win it all back. Or I am going to burn this place to the ground." The pit boss returned with a new clipboard. This one contained a different document. It was not a standard marker. It was a secured promissory note, a legal instrument used for high-stakes lending. It required collateral, real, tangible assets. Tyson grabbed the clipboard, his hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. He scanned the document, his eyes glazed over. He saw the number $2 million, but he did not read the fine print. He did not read the clause about immediate foreclosure in the event of default. He did not read the clause about the surrender of equity. "I need the deed to the shares," Audrey said, her voice cutting through the noise of the casino. "You do not have the physical certificates, but as the CEO, you can pledge your ownership interest electronically." Tyson laughed, a manic sound. "Take it. Take it all. The company is worth $50 million. $2 million is nothing. I will win it back in an hour and buy the deed back with cash." He pulled out his phone and accessed his brokerage account. He transferred the digital rights to the holding company listed on the contract, Grand Gambit LLC. He did not know that Grand Gambit LLC was a shell company owned by me. He was handing his legacy directly to the person he hated most. Courtney cheered, clapping her hands. "Yes, baby. Go big or go home. Show them who we are." Patricia was breathing heavily, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and thrill. "Just win, Tyson. You have to win." Tyson gripped the gold pen. He pressed the tip against the paper. The ink flowed dark and permanent. He signed his name with a flourish, underlining it twice. "There," he said, slamming the pen down. $2 million. Give me my chips." I took the clipboard. I looked at the signature. It was messy, desperate, and legally binding. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it, the final nail in the coffin. He had just signed away the controlling interest of Edwards Packaging. The company my grandfather built was now mine. I handed the clipboard to the pit boss. Verification complete, I said. Issue the chips. The dealer pushed a mountain of plaques toward Tyson. These were not standard chips. They were rectangular plaques, each worth $25,000. They looked like bars of gold. Tyson grabbed them, stacking them in a chaotic pile. He looked at me, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. "Watch closely, Audrey," he hissed. "You are about to witness the greatest comeback in the history of Atlantic City." I stepped back, folding my arms. "I am watching, Mr. Edwards. I am watching very closely." He pushed $500,000 onto the table. "Deal," he screamed. Marcus dealt. Tyson stood on 18. The dealer turned over a 20. Lost. Tyson screamed a sound of pure animalistic rage. He pushed another million. Lost. The crowd watched in silence. It was not a game anymore. It was a slaughter. Tyson was bleeding money, and he could not stop. He was throwing good money after bad, chasing a ghost that would never appear. And I stood there, the silent owner, holding the deed to his life in my hands, waiting for the final chip to fall. The morning sun sliced through the heavy velvet curtains of the Emperor's suite like a laser beam. Inside, the air smelled of stale champagne, expensive perfume, and looming disaster. Tyson groaned, burying his face in the 600 thread count pillow. His head throbbed with a rhythm that matched the pounding in his temples. He tried to roll over to find a cool spot on the sheets, but the pounding did not stop. It got louder. It was not the headache. It was the door. Bam, bam, bam. It was not the polite tap of housekeeping coming to turn down the bed. It was the heavy, authoritative hammering of someone who refused to be ignored. Tyson sat up, clutching his head. Beside him, Courtney was still passed out, wearing a silk sleep mask embroidered with the words, "Sleeping Beauty." In the adjacent room, I could hear Patricia snoring loudly, unaware that her world had ended 6 hours ago. Tyson stumbled out of bed, wrapping a plush robe around his waist. He looked at the clock. It was 9 in the morning. Rage flared in his chest. He marched to the double doors, ready to fire whoever dared to disturb his sleep. He swung the door open violently. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he shouted, his voice raspy. "I am a VIP guest. If you do not have a damn good reason for waking me up, I will have your job." Standing in the hallway was not a maid or a butler. It was a tall man with a face like carved granite, wearing a suit that cost more than Tyson's car. He was flanked by 2 large security guards who stood with their hands clasped in front of them. "Mr. Edwards," the man said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "I am Mr. Sterling, the Director of Finance for the Monarch. We are not here for room service. We are here for collection." Tyson blinked, his brain still foggy from the alcohol. "Collection? What are you talking about? Just put it on the bill. I will check out on Sunday." Mr. Sterling did not blink. He held up a tablet displaying a number that made Tyson's blood turn to ice. The screen showed a balance of $2,575,000. "Your credit agreement was strictly defined," Mr. Edward Sterling said, stepping into the room without being invited. "The terms of the promissory note you signed last night state that the debt is payable immediately upon demand. The house is demanding payment. Now." Tyson took a step back, tripping over a discarded champagne bottle. "You cannot be serious. I have 3 days left on my reservation." "Your reservation has been suspended pending payment," Sterling replied, closing the door behind him. The 2 guards blocked the exit. "We attempted to charge the corporate card on file for the room service and spa treatments. It was declined. We attempted to run the deposit for the gambling debt. Declined." Patricia appeared in the doorway of her bedroom, her hair a bird's nest of tangles, her makeup smeared. "What is going on, Tyson? Who are these people? Why are they in our suite?" "They want the money," Mom, Tyson stammered. "They want it now." Sterling looked at them with disdain. "You have 30 minutes to settle the balance, Mr. Edwards. If the funds are not transferred, we will be forced to involve legal authorities." And I should remind you that fraud over $1 million is a federal offense. Tyson laughed nervously, trying to regain his composure. Fraud. Do not be ridiculous. I am Tyson Edwards. My family owns Edwards Packaging. I have the money. It is just a banking glitch. He scrambled toward the desk, grabbing his wallet. Watch this. I will clear this up in 10 seconds. He pulled out the black metal card, the card that represented his entire identity. He held it up like a shield. Run it again, he commanded, his hand shaking. Run it for the full amount, and then get out of my room. Sterling took the card slowly. He pulled a mobile card reader from his pocket. I will run it, Mr. Edwards. But I think we both know what the result will be. I watched on the monitor from the floor above as Sterling inserted the card. The little machine beeped once. Processing. Tyson held his breath. Patricia clutched her throat. Courtney sat up in bed, pulling off her mask, sensing the panic in the air. The machine beeped again. A long, harsh tone declined. Tyson looked at the card reader like it was a defective toy. He snatched the black metal card back from Sterling and began rubbing the smart chip against the sleeve of his silk robe. It was a pathetic gesture. He was trying to clean a microchip that was functioning perfectly. It is the machine, Tyson insisted, his voice rising an octave. Your connection is bad, or the magnetic strip is dirty. Do you have any idea what the limit is on this card? It is in Centurion business account. It does not decline. It physically cannot decline. He thrust the card back into Sterling's face. Type the numbers in manually. Override the system. Just get it done. High above them in the cool darkness of the surveillance room, I watched the desperation unfold on the high-definition monitor. Tyson looked small on the screen. He was sweating profusely, the moisture staining the collar of his expensive robe. I sat in the command chair with a laptop open in front of me. On the screen was the back-end interface for the Edwards Packaging corporate treasury. Mr. Rossi stood behind me, his hand resting on the back of my chair. The moment has arrived, he said softly. I looked at the digital dashboard. It showed the available liquidity of the company. For years, Tyson had treated this account like a bottomless well. Today I was capping the well. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I navigated to the security protocols. I selected the option for emergency asset preservation. This was not just about declining a credit card transaction. This was a corporate lockout. By executing this command, I was freezing every account, every credit line, and every payroll transfer associated with the company. I was putting the entire Edwards empire into a medically induced coma. I pressed the Enter key. A progress bar flashed across the screen for a second, followed by a message in bold red letters. Assets frozen. Account status locked. Fraud alert active. Back in the suite, Sterling looked at the machine in his hand. He did not type in the numbers manually as Tyson requested. He inserted the chip one last time. The machine hummed. It connected to the global banking network. Tyson held his breath. Patricia crossed her fingers. Courtney stopped breathing. The machine let out a sharp, dissonant buzz. It was a sound of finality. Sterling looked at the small display screen. It says call issuer. Sterling read his voice calm and detached. And there is a secondary code here, Mr. Edwards. Code 04. Do you know what that means? Tyson shook his head, his mouth hanging open. It means pick up card, Sterling said. It means the bank has instructed me to confiscate this property immediately due to suspected insolvency or fraud. No, Tyson screamed, lunging for the machine. You cannot take it. That is my card. The two security guards moved with lightning speed. One of them stepped between Tyson and Sterling, blocking his path with a wall of muscle. Tyson bounced off the guard's chest and stumbled back onto the plush carpet. Sterling calmly removed the black metal card from the reader. He held it up to the light for a moment, examining the symbol of power that Tyson loved so much. Then, with a smooth, practiced motion, he slipped it into his breast pocket. The card has been retained, Sterling stated. You now have no means of payment. The hotel eviction protocol is now in effect. You have 10 minutes to gather your personal effects and vacate the premises. If you are not out by then, we will have the authorities remove you for trespassing and theft of services. Tyson sat on the floor staring at Sterling's pocket. He looked like a child who had just had his favorite toy thrown into a fire. The reality was crashing down on him. The money was not just gone. The access was gone. He was no longer a CEO. He was just a broke gambler in a bathrobe. The silence in the room shattered instantly. Patricia was the first to break. She scrambled for her purse, dumping its contents onto the floor until she found her phone. Her manicured fingers were trembling so violently she could barely unlock the screen. She dialed the private number for their wealth management liaison at the bank. It was a number that was supposed to be answered on the first ring 24 hours a day. She put the phone to her ear, pacing in tight circles. "Pick up, Charles. Pick up, you incompetent fool." The line clicked. But it was not Charles. It was a cold, automated recording. "We are sorry. The account you are trying to reach has been suspended for suspicious activity. Please visit a local branch with valid identification to resolve this matter. Goodbye." Patricia screamed a high-pitched sound of pure terror. She threw the phone onto the sofa. "They blocked me. They actually blocked me. How is this possible? We are the Edwards family. We do not get blocked. We own the bank." Tyson was not listening to her. The rejection of the black card had snapped something inside his mind. He was no longer looking at Sterling or the guards. He was looking at the room itself as if the furniture was mocking him. His face was a mask of purple rage. Veins bulged in his neck. "It is a glitch," he roared, kicking a heavy ottoman across the room. "It is a system error. Your cheap internet connection is down. That machine is broken." He lunged toward the desk, grabbing a crystal lamp. He ripped the cord from the wall and hurled it against the far wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, sending glass shrapnel flying across the carpet. "Fix it," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Sterling. "Reset the terminal. Reboot the system. My money is there. I have millions. I have tens of millions. You are trying to humiliate me. You are trying to steal my card." He grabbed a bottle of champagne from the ice bucket. It was warm now. He swung it like a club, smashing the neck against the marble table. Foam and glass exploded everywhere, soaking his robe. "Run it again," he demanded, brandishing the jagged bottle like a weapon. "Bring me a new machine. Bring me a manager who knows how to operate technology. This is a conspiracy. You rigged the deck, and now you are rigging the payment processing." Sterling did not flinch. He did not step back. He simply made a note on his tablet. "That was a baccarat crystal lamp valued at $4,000, Sterling said, his voice calm, "and a vintage table valued at $12,000. We are adding these damages to your outstanding balance. Please continue, Mr. Edwards. Every item you break is just another line on the indictment." Tyson looked around the room, his chest heaving. He wanted to destroy everything. He wanted to tear the curtains down and set fire to the bed. But the cold indifference of the man in the suit stopped him. He realized with a sick feeling in his gut that his anger was not scaring anyone. For the first time in his life, his temper tantrum had no currency. He dropped the broken bottle. It fell to the floor with a dull thud. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. "Call the police," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I want to report a theft. You stole my life." Sterling signaled to the guards. "We already called them, Mr. Edwards. They are waiting for you in the lobby. Or you can explain your theory about the broken machine to them." The elevator doors chimed and slid open, revealing the grand lobby of the Monarch. Yesterday they had walked through these doors like royalty, expecting rose petals to be thrown at their feet. Today they were being marched out like common criminals. Tyson was still wearing his stained dress shirt, his tie missing and his face pale. Patricia was clutching her purse to her chest, sobbing dry, heaving breaths that shook her entire frame. But Courtney was not crying. She was scanning the room with the eyes of a cornered animal looking for someone to blame. 2 security guards gripped Tyson by the arms, propelling him forward. A murmur went through the crowd of guests. People stopped at the slot machines. Waitresses paused with their trays. Phones were raised not to admire them but to document the downfall of the so-called King of New York. The flashbulbs that Courtney usually loved were now exposing her shame. Then she saw me. I was standing near the main fountain wearing my charcoal suit, my hands clasped behind my back. I was not hiding. I was standing in the light watching the final act of the play I had written. Courtney broke free from the guard for a split second, lunging toward the velvet rope. Her finger stabbed the air in my direction. Her. It was her. She screamed, her voice shrill and breaking. That bitch rigged it. She turned to the crowd spinning in a circle, her face twisted with hysteria. Do not you see? It is a setup. My sister works here. She is the floor manager. She programmed the machines. She told the dealer what cards to pull. We did not lose. We were robbed. She pointed back at me, her eyes bulging. You tweaked the algorithm, Audrey. I know you did. You adjusted the odds because you are jealous. You could not stand seeing us win, so you used your little employee access card to drain our accounts. This is illegal. This is entrapment. Tyson looked up, his eyes locking onto mine. The fog of alcohol seemed to clear for a moment, replaced by a dawn of paranoid realization. Yeah, he croaked, pointing a shaking finger. The shuffle. She signaled the dealer. I saw it. She tapped the table and the cards changed. It is a scam. This whole place is a scam. Courtney pulled out her phone, trying to live stream her own arrest. I am going to sue you, she yelled into the camera lens. I am going to tell the world that the monarch is a fraud. They target rich people and they steal their money. My sister is a thief. Look at her. Look at that smug face. She planned this whole thing. The head of security did not let her finish. He grabbed her arm firmly, twisting it behind her back. That is enough, Ms. Edwards, he said, his voice booming. You are causing a disturbance. You are trespassing on private property. No! Courtney shrieked, kicking at the air as they dragged her toward the revolving doors. I am the victim here. Check the tapes. Check the computer logs. She hacked the system. Audrey, you are going to jail for this. You hear me. You are going to rot in a cell while I sue this place for every penny it has. I stood absolutely still. I did not defend myself. I did not argue. I just watched them scream their conspiracy theories to a room full of strangers who only saw three entitled brats throwing a tantrum. They could not accept that they were simply bad at math. They had to invent a villain to explain their failure. They wanted to believe I was a hacker, a cheater, a mastermind. They refused to believe the simple truth. They were just losers, and the house always wins. Courtney's screams faded into the background noise as Tyson locked eyes with me. He was not looking at a sister-in-law or an employee anymore. He was looking at the person who had just deleted his existence. The realization hit him like a physical blow. I was not just the witness to his destruction. I was the executioner, and I was standing there in my bespoke suit looking down at him with a pity that burned hotter than hate. His face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated violence. A vein bulged in his forehead, pulsing with a dangerous rhythm. He let out a guttural roar, a sound that belonged in a jungle, not a five-star lobby. He threw his elbow back, catching the security guard off balance. The grip on his arm loosened just enough. Tyson lunged. He moved with the desperate speed of a man who had nothing left to lose. He sprinted across the polished marble floor, his hands curled into claws, reaching for my throat. You ruined me, he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. You deadbeat! I will kill you! The tourists near the fountain scattered, dropping their bags in panic. Patricia shrieked, covering her mouth with her hands. But I did not move. I did not flinch. I did not even blink. I watched him come toward me like a wave crashing against a cliff. I knew something he did not. I was untouchable. Just as Tyson came within striking distance, a shadow detached itself from the pillar behind me. It was the head of Mr. Ross's personal security detail, a man named Kane, who was built like a tank. He moved with terrifying speed. He did not punch Tyson. He simply intercepted him. Kane stepped into Tyson's path, catching the charging man by the lapels of his ruined tuxedo jacket. He used Tyson's own momentum against him. With a pivot of his hips and a sharp twist of his upper body, he slammed Tyson into the floor. The sound of bone hitting marble echoed through the silent lobby like a gunshot. A collective gasp went through the crowd of onlookers. Tyson lay pinned to the ground, his face pressed against the cold stone, his arm twisted behind his back at a painful angle. Kane placed a heavy knee in the center of Tyson's spine, holding him there with the ease of a man holding down an unruly child. Stay down. Kane commanded, his voice low and dangerous, close to Tyson's ear. Do not move, or I will snap your arm. Tyson groaned, struggling against the weight, but he was powerless. He looked up from the floor, his cheek smashed against the tiles. He looked at my shoes. My sharp black stilettos were inches from his nose. I took a small step forward, looming over him. The entire lobby watched in stunned silence. I looked down at the man who used to mock my cheap clothes and my small life. The man who told me I was born to serve people like him. Now he was lying at my feet in a puddle of his own failure, waiting for permission to stand up. I leaned down slightly so only he could hear me. You were right about one thing, Tyson. The strong do eat the weak. You just forgot which one of us was the predator. Tyson lay pinned against the cold marble, his breath coming in ragged gasps under the weight of the security guard. But the show was not over. Patricia Edwards was not a woman who accepted defeat quietly. She had spent 60 years believing that the world would always bend to her will if she screamed loud enough. She looked at her son-in-law on the floor, then at Courtney wailing near the door, and finally at me standing calmly in my suit. Her shock turned into a weapon. She marched toward the head of security, her face a mask of crumbling plaster and smeared mascara. She did not look like a grieving mother. She looked like a cornered viper. You are making a huge mistake, she screeched, pointing a trembling finger at the guard holding Tyson. You think you can treat us like common criminals. We are the Edwards family. My father built this city. Do you hear me? He built half the buildings on this coastline. She turned to the crowd of onlookers, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. We are not thieves. We are being framed by this jealous little girl. But I have friends in high places. I know the man who runs this place. She spun around, scanning the mezzanine level, her eyes wild. Call him. Call the prince. I know he is here. My father knew him personally. They did business together for 30 years. Tell him Patricia Edwards is here. Tell him his old friend's daughter is being assaulted in his lobby. The lobby went deadly silent. The name the prince was a legend in Atlantic City. He was a ghost story whispered among high rollers. Most people thought he did not exist, or that he was just a corporate myth invented to scare cheats. To invoke his name was a dangerous gamble. I stood perfectly still, watching her unravel. I could see the desperation in her eyes. She truly believed that my grandfather's influence would save her. She thought the old alliances were still in place. She did not realize that loyalty had shifted. She did not realize that the torch had been passed, and she had been left in the dark. I want to see him right now, Patricia bellowed, stomping her foot like a petulant child. Get him down here. He will fire every single one of you. He will have you arrested for assaulting a VIP. Call him out. I slowly raised my hand and signaled to the shadows near the private elevator bank. The heavy velvet ropes parted. A figure emerged from the darkness. Mr. Rossi stepped into the light. He was immaculate in his black tuxedo, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. He walked with the silent grace of a predator who had controlled this jungle for decades. The crowd parted for him instinctively, sensing the power that radiated from him. Patricia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. There he is! Thank God! She rushed toward him, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Rossi, you have to help us. Look at what they are doing. My daughter Audrey, she has gone insane. She has turned your staff against us. She froze our accounts. Please tell them who we are. Tell them to let Tyson go. Rossi stopped 10 feet away from her. He did not offer his hand. He did not smile. He looked at her with eyes that were as cold and hard as the diamonds she had lost at the table. I know exactly who you are, Patricia Rossi said, his voice echoing in the silent lobby. And I know exactly what is happening here. You asked for the prince. Well, I am here, but I am afraid you are laboring under a misunderstanding. I do not intervene in the affairs of the ownership. Patricia blinked, confused. Ownership? But you are the owner. My father said you ran this place. Rossi shook his head slowly. I run the operations, Patricia. I serve the throne, but I do not sit on it. If you have a complaint about how you are being treated, you should address it to the majority shareholder. He turned slowly and bowed his head. He was bowing to me. Patricia froze. She looked at Rossi. Then she slowly turned her head to look at me standing tall in my charcoal suit. The realization hit her like a physical slap. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking gray and old. No, she whispered. That is impossible. I took a step forward, closing the distance between us. My heels clicked on the marble, a sound like the ticking of a clock counting down her final seconds. Hello, Mother, I said softly. I believe you wanted to speak to the manager. I am listening. The security detail escorted them not to a holding cell but to the Obsidian Room. It was the most exclusive meeting space in the Monarch, reserved for billion-dollar mergers and heads of state. The walls were lined with dark mahogany, and the center of the room was dominated by a table long enough to land a small plane on. The carpet was thick enough to silence footsteps, and the air smelled of lemon oil and old money. As the heavy double doors clicked shut, cutting off the noise of the lobby, the transformation in my family was instant and terrifying to watch. The fear evaporated. The humiliation vanished. In its place, the old entitlement rushed back in like a flood, filling the cracks in their composure. Tyson brushed the marble dust off his torn lapel, wincing as he touched his bruised ribs. He walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the Atlantic City skyline. He adjusted his collar, trying to regain the silhouette of a CEO, even though his shirt was ripped and his tie was missing. Did you see that? He said, letting out a shaky laugh that sounded more like a bark. Rossi stepped in just in time. He saw that animal of a guard choking me out, and he put a stop to it. He knows better than to let a lawsuit like that happen on his watch. That guard is dead meat. I will have his badge by morning. Patricia was already pulling a compact mirror from her purse, aggressively reapplying her lipstick. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes held a new spark of manic hope. She smoothed her gold dress, ignoring the tear in the hem where she had tripped. Of course he stepped in, Patricia said, snapping the compact shut with a sharp click. He is a businessman, Tyson. He worked with your father for decades. He knows that humiliating the Edwards family is bad for business. He probably just wanted to get us away from the cameras before he fixes this mess. He is a gentleman from the old school. He understands loyalty. Courtney slumped into one of the massive leather chairs, examining a broken fingernail with tragic intensity. God, I hope so. Did you see Audrey standing there like she owned the place? She is delusional. She probably bribed the staff to embarrass us. Wait until Rossi finds out she hacked the system. He is going to fire her so hard she will bounce back to Queens. I stood in the corner near the door, unnoticed as usual. I watched them reconstruct their reality brick by brick. They were in a room surrounded by security after being publicly shamed and stripping themselves of their wealth, yet they were convincing themselves they had won. They believed that the rules of the world, the rules that said the rich always get a pass, would save them one last time. Tyson turned to me, his lip curling in a familiar sneer. You are quiet now, Audrey. Realizing you overplayed your hand, you thought you could parade us through the lobby and get away with it. But the grown-ups are here now. The prince is coming back to cut a deal. He is going to wipe that debt because he respects the family name, and when he asks what to do with you, I am going to suggest he presses charges. Patricia nodded vigorously, checking her reflection in the polished table. It is for her own good. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. You cannot just attack your family and expect to get away with it. They sat there preening like vultures waiting for a carcass. They straightened their spines, they practiced their benevolent smiles, they were ready to accept Mr. Ross's apology. They were ready to be reinstated as royalty. They had no idea that the man coming through that door was not bringing a peace treaty. He was bringing the execution order. And they had no idea that the executioner was already in the room, standing quietly in the corner, watching them dig their own graves. The heavy oak doors swung open, and Mr. Rossi entered the Obsidian Room. He moved with a quiet, terrifying gravity, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. He did not look at the security guards or the broken furniture. His eyes were fixed on a point at the far end of the table, where a massive high-backed leather executive chair was turned toward the window, shielding its occupant from view. Patricia gasped and rushed toward him, her hands clasped in a pleading gesture. Oh, thank God you are here, Mr. Rossi. You have to put an end to this madness. She grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his expensive suit. Look at us. Look at what your staff has done. They assaulted my son-in-law. They dragged my daughter through the lobby like a common criminal, and it is all because of her. She pointed a shaking finger at me, standing quietly in the corner. She is a cancer, Mr. Rossi. I tried to raise her right. I tried to teach her respect. But she has always been jealous. She has always been a black sheep. She hacked your computers. She manipulated the games. She is trying to destroy the Edwards family name because she knows she will never be one of us. Tyson stumbled forward, wiping blood from his lip. She is right, Rossi. This is a corporate hit job. That girl is dangerous. She is mentally unstable. My grandfather only gave her a job here out of pity. He knew she could not survive in the real world. And this is how she repays him. By biting the hand that feeds her. Rossi stood motionless, his face a mask of stone. He let them speak. He let them pour every ounce of their venom onto the floor. He let them paint themselves as the victims and me as the villain. Patricia was sobbing now, warm crocodile tears streaming down her face. Please, Mr. Rossi, for the sake of the friendship you had with my father, fix this. Fire her. Have her arrested. Wipe this debt and let us go home. We will never speak of this again. I promise you. Just tell the owner. Tell the prince that Patricia Edwards is begging for his mercy. She looked toward the turned chair at the head of the table. He is sitting right there, is he not? That is the prince. I know he is listening. Tell him to turn around. Tell him to look at me. He will remember me. I was his favorite. Rossi slowly pulled his arm from her grip. He brushed the sleeve of his jacket, as if removing a speck of dirt. He looked at Patricia with a gaze that was almost pitying. You are correct, Mrs. Edwards, Rossi said, his voice deep and resonant. The prince is listening. The owner has heard every word you said, every insult, every lie, every plea for special treatment. Patricia smiled a gruesome, twisted smile of relief. See, Tyson, I told you. He is listening. He will save us. Rossi took 2 steps back. He turned his body toward the high-backed chair at the end of the table. The room went deadly silent. Even Courtney stopped crying. He did not speak to the chair as an equal. He placed his hand over his heart and lowered his head in a deep, formal bow. It was a gesture of absolute submission, a gesture reserved for royalty. I have heard their testimony, Rossi said to the back of the chair, and I have witnessed their conduct. The decision is yours to make, Chairman. Patricia froze. Tyson stopped breathing. They stared at the back of the leather chair, waiting for the old man they imagined to spin around and save them. They waited for the ghost of their past. They did not know they were staring at the future. The high-backed leather chair did not spin quickly. It rotated with a slow, heavy deliberation, the mechanism silent and smooth. As the chair turned, the first thing they saw was a hand resting on the armrest. A hand that was steady and relaxed. Then the shoulder of the charcoal suit. And finally, me. I sat there with my legs crossed and my fingers interlaced on my lap. I was not smiling. I was not frowning. I was looking at them with the cold, detached curiosity of a scientist examining insects under a microscope. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a world stopping on its axis. Patricia stared at me, her mouth hanging open in a rictus of shock. Her brain was trying to process the image, but it refused to compute. In her mind, I was the failure, the mistake, the girl who fetched coffee. Seeing me in the seat of ultimate power was a glitch in her reality. Tyson was the first to speak. His voice was a strangled whisper of disbelief that quickly rose to a shout. Audrey, what the hell are you doing? Get out of that chair. Have you lost your mind? That is the prince's seat. He lunged forward instinctively, wanting to pull me out of it, but Kane, the security chief, stepped into his path. Kane did not push him this time. He just stared him down, and Tyson stopped, frozen by the memory of the marble floor against his face. I did not move. I did not flinch. I simply raised one eyebrow. Sit down, Tyson, I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that filled the room. It was the voice of the person who signed the paychecks. Patricia blinked rapidly, looking from me to Rossi. Mr. Rossi, why are you letting her do this? She is humiliating us. Tell her to get up. Tell her who the real owner is. Rossi took a step back, aligning himself with my chair. He clasped his hands behind his back. I have already introduced you, Mrs. Edwards, Rossi, said his voice devoid of emotion. You are speaking to the majority shareholder, the chairman of the board, the owner of the monarch. No, Patricia screamed, clutching her chest. That is a lie. My father would never leave this to her. She is incompetent. She is nothing. I reached for the thick leather folder sitting on the desk. It was the file containing the transfer deeds and the promissory notes Tyson had signed just hours ago. I picked it up, feeling the heft of it. I tossed it onto the center of the mahogany table. It landed with a heavy thud that echoed like a gavel striking a sounding block. "Read it, Mother," I said coldly. "Read the name on the deed. Grandpa did not leave me the cash because he knew you would steal it. He left me the machine that makes the cash. He left me the empire." I stood up slowly, towering over the table. "There is no prince," I said, walking toward them. "The prince was a code name, a title. And now that title belongs to me. I am the one who approved your credit line. I am the one who upgraded your suite. And I am the one who watched you gamble away your entire fortune in a single night." I stopped directly in front of Tyson. I looked at his ruined suit and his terrified eyes. "You wanted a lesson in wealth creation, Tyson. You told me to watch and learn. Well, I watched. And I learned that you are not a businessman. You are a gambler playing with money that does not belong to you." I pointed to the file on the table. "Open it. Look at the signature on the promissory note. You did not borrow $2 million from a bank. You borrowed it from me. I own your debt. I own your company. And as of this morning, I own the house you sleep in. Welcome to my casino." Tyson stared at the document, his hands shaking so violently that the paper rattled against the mahogany table. He read the clause I had highlighted in yellow. It was the default provision. It stated clearly that in the event of non-payment, the lender had the right to seize all pledged assets immediately. He looked up at me, his eyes hollow and terrified. "You cannot do this," he whispered. "Edward's packaging has been in the family for 50 years. It is worth 10 times what I owe you. This is theft." "It is business." "Tyson," I replied, my voice echoing in the silent room. "You wagered the company on a hand of blackjack. You lost. The electronic transfer of the controlling shares was executed the moment your credit card declined. You are no longer the CEO. You are trespassing on corporate property." I turned to Patricia. She was clutching her purse, looking for an exit strategy. She thought she was safe because she had not signed the promissory note. She was wrong. "And you, Mother," I said, holding out my hand. "The keys to the Hamptons' house." Patricia recoiled. "You cannot touch my house. That is in my name. I did not sign your contract." I picked up the second document from the table. "Actually, you did. When you authorized the unlimited credit line for the suite, you signed a personal guarantee. It is standard protocol for VVIP guests. It lists your primary residence as collateral. Since you owe the hotel $75,000 and have no means to pay, I am exercising the lien. The house belongs to the monarch now." Patricia let out a strangled sob. She looked at Rossi, begging for help, but he just stared at the ceiling. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached into her purse and pulled out the heavy brass keyring. She dropped it into my open palm. It was the sound of her entire identity hitting the floor. Courtney began to cry, a high-pitched wail of despair. "So we are homeless. We have no car. We have no money. How are we supposed to get back to the city? We cannot walk to New York." I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer. I pulled out 3 slips of paper. I placed them gently on the table next to the seized deeds. "I would never let my family walk," I said with a faint smile. "I took the liberty of purchasing your travel arrangements." Tyson snatched the papers up, hoping for plane tickets or a private car service. He looked at them, and his face went purple. "Bus tickets," he choked out. "You bought us bus tickets." "Not just any bus," I corrected. "The Atlantic City Express. It departs from the public terminal in 45 minutes. It is the economy line, so there is no Wi-Fi and the seats do not recline. But it will get you to Port Authority by midnight. If you run, you might catch it. Get them out of my sight, Kane." The security guards moved forward. They did not need to use force this time. The Edwards family was broken. They were shells of the people who had walked in on Friday. They dragged their Louis Vuitton trunks, which now held nothing but dirty clothes, and walked out of the obsidian room. They did not look back. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the entrance. Far below, I saw 3 small figures emerging from the golden doors. They looked like ants scurrying across the pavement. They stood on the curb arguing over who would carry the bags waiting for the shuttle to the bus station. Mr. Rossi walked up beside me, holding 2 crystal flutes of vintage champagne. He handed one to me. "The transfer is complete, Ms. Edwards," he said softly. "The board is ready for your first meeting on Monday." I took the glass and looked out at the empire my grandfather had built. The lights of the boardwalk were just starting to flicker on, illuminating the kingdom that was finally in the right hands. "To the house," Rossi said, raising his glass. I touched my glass to his. The chime rang out clear and sweet. "To the house," I replied, taking a sip. Because the house always wins. End. The saga of Audrey and the Edwards family is more than just a satisfying tale of revenge. It is a masterclass in the dynamics of power and the fatal cost of arrogance. The central lesson here is that hubris is the most dangerous form of blindness. Tyson and Patricia walked into the Monarch believing their status was a shield, but in reality it was a blindfold. They were so intoxicated by their own perceived importance that they failed to recognize the shifting landscape beneath their feet. They confused spending power with actual power, and that misconception cost them everything. Furthermore, the story illustrates the terrifying efficiency of strategic patience. Audrey did not win by screaming or making a scene. She won by handing her enemies the shovel and allowing them to dig their own graves. She understood that true control isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It is about owning the room itself. While her family relied on luck and the gambler's fallacy, believing the universe owed them a win, Audrey relied on math leverage and ownership. Ultimately, this narrative reminds us that in the high-stakes game of life, you must never underestimate the quiet observer. The loudest people often have the least substance, while the silent ones are often holding the deed to the building. If you don't know who the sucker at the table is, it is almost certainly you. Don't bet your future on luck. Bet it on preparation, control, and the understanding that while players come and go, the house always stands. If you enjoyed this story of calculated revenge and high-stakes justice, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next hand we deal.